A single father walks into a small-town diner, exhausted from working 3 jobs, with only enough money for a cup of coffee. But when he calls home to check on his little girl, the diner owner hears every word about broken refrigerators, warm milk, and peanut butter sandwiches, and spits out a sentence that changes everything. "I don't want trash in my restaurant." But this father doesn't fight back. He lowers his eyes, pays for coffee he never even got, and quietly walks away. That dignity cuts deeper than any argument could, and suddenly the woman who judged him can't shake the guilt burning in her chest. What she doesn't know, that this man is about to be dragged into a storm of lies, gossip, and even the risk of losing his daughter forever, and that her one cruel mistake might be the only thing that can save him in the end. So the question is, when a whole town turns against him, will her second chance come in time, or will it already be too late? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The August heat clung to Marcus Walker's work shirt as he pushed through the glass door of Miss Clara's diner. Grease still darkened the creases of his knuckles despite scrubbing them raw at the auto shop sink. 3 shifts, 14 hours. His legs trembled as he slid into a corner booth. The diner sat quiet between lunch rush and dinner crowd. Checkered linoleum gleamed under fluorescent lights. Clara Thompson moved between empty tables with a damp rag, her gray hair pinned tight against her skull. The smell of coffee and bacon grease hung thick in the air. Marcus pulled out his phone, the screen spider-webbed from corner to corner where Grace had dropped it last month. He pressed it to his ear. "Hey, baby girl." "Daddy!" Grace's voice burst through the static. "When you coming home?" "Soon, sweetheart. Real soon." He closed his eyes. The Buick sat dead 2 blocks away, transmission finally giving up after 240,000 miles of hanging on. "You eat yet?" "Not yet." "There's bread on the counter. Peanut butter's in the cabinet above the stove. Remember where I showed you?" "The high one?" "That's right. Stand on the chair, but be careful." Clara's rag stopped moving. She watched from behind the counter, lips pressed thin. "Can you bring McDonald's?" Grace asked. Marcus's chest tightened. "Not tonight, baby, but that peanut butter sandwich gonna taste real good. Put some of that strawberry jam on it, too, the one Mrs. Henderson gave us." "Okay, Daddy." "And drink your milk. Still got half a carton in the fridge." "It's warm." The cold stopped working again. The refrigerator. Another thing broken. Another thing he couldn't fix. Marcus rubbed his temple with his free hand. "That's all right. Put some ice in it." Clara moved closer, wiping the same spot on the neighboring table over and over. Her wedding ring caught the light as her hand worked in tight circles. "Daddy, can you sing me the song?" "Which song, baby?" "The one about sunshine." Marcus glanced at Clara. She stood 3 feet away now, pretending to straighten napkin dispensers. "Not right now, Grace. I'm in a restaurant." "Please?" He dropped his voice to barely a whisper. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." "Louder, Daddy. I can't hear." "That's all for now. You be good here. Lock the door behind you when you get your sandwich." "I love you, Daddy." "Love you more than all the stars." The phone clicked dead, battery gone. Marcus set it face down on the scarred tabletop. Clara appeared at his booth, order pad in hand. Deep lines framed her mouth. Her eyes stayed fixed on the pad, not meeting his. "What'll it be?" Marcus opened his wallet. $3.47. Enough for coffee. Maybe toast if the price hadn't gone up. "Just coffee, please. Black." Clara's pen stopped moving. "That's it?" "Yes, ma'am." "Kitchen's still open. Got fresh meatloaf. Mashed potatoes." The smell made Marcus's stomach clench. He'd skipped breakfast, lunch too. But Grace needed school supplies next week. New shoes before winter. "Just coffee's fine." Clara's jaw tightened. She looked at his oil-stained shirt, his rough hands, the dead phone with its shattered screen. Her gaze lingered on his worn boots, soles separating from leather. "We don't usually let folks sit through dinner rush just nursing coffee." I'll be quick, ma'am. Soon as I finish. She turned toward the kitchen, then stopped. Her shoulders rose and fell with a sharp breath. I don't want trash in my restaurant. The words dropped between them like stones in still water. Marcus's hand stilled on the table. A family photo behind the register showed Clara with a man in a veteran's cap, both smiling, arms linked. Different woman in that photo. Softer eyes. The ceiling fan clicked overhead, pushing warm air in lazy circles. Marcus could stand up, could match her word for word. 3 jobs, 14 hours, oil under his nails and an ache in his spine that never left. Trash? The word burned, but Grace's voice still echoed in his ear. I love you, Daddy. He kept his eyes down, studying the wood grain of the table. Someone had carved JS plus MM in the corner, probably years ago when Clara's husband still lived, when this place felt different. I apologize for the trouble, ma'am. His voice came out steady, quiet. I'll go. He slid toward the edge of the booth. Wait, Clara's voice cracked. I didn't mean... But Marcus already stood, hands at his sides, no anger in his face, just tired, bone-deep tired that sleep couldn't fix. It's all right, ma'am. I understand. He didn't, but what else was there to say? The bell above the door chimed as he pushed through. Clara stood frozen, order pad clutched against her chest, watching him walk past the window. The sun sat low, painting everything orange and gold. Marcus headed back toward his broken car, stomach empty, thinking about Grace eating peanut butter alone while the refrigerator hummed its dying song. Behind him, Clara's hand pressed against the glass door. The word trash still hung in the air like old smoke, refusing to clear. The diner fell quiet. Even the coffee maker seemed to hold its breath. Clara's hand trembled against the order pad. The words she'd spoken hung between the empty tables like a confession she couldn't take back. Through the window, she watched Marcus stop beside a rusted sedan with its hood popped open. His shoulders sagged as he stared at the engine. She moved without thinking, grabbing a dish rag, wiping down the booth he'd left. The wood gleamed already, but she scrubbed harder. The bell above the door stayed silent. No dinner rush coming, not yet. Marcus appeared in the window again, walking back toward the diner. Clara's stomach dropped. She gripped the dish rag tighter, knuckles white. The door opened. He didn't look at her, just walked to the booth and placed $3 bills on the table. Then quarters, nickels, counting out exact change for coffee he'd never received. Thank you for your time, ma'am. The politeness cut deeper than anger would have. Clara's throat burned. You don't... I haven't even brought... It's all right. Marcus smoothed the bills flat against the wood. I don't want to cause any trouble. Trouble. The word made her flinch. She'd caused the trouble, spitting venom at a man who'd done nothing but call his daughter. Marcus turned toward the door, each step measured, unhurried, dignity in his worn boots and oil-stained clothes, the kind of dignity that couldn't be bought or borrowed. Wait. The word tore from Clara's throat. He paused, hand on the door handle, but didn't turn around. I'm sorry, what I said, that was wrong of me. Still he didn't turn. Have a good evening, ma'am. The bell chimed. The door closed. Clara stood holding the dish rag like a lifeline, watching him walk past the window again. Her husband James would have been ashamed. 20 years they'd run this place together, serving anyone who walked through that door. Black, white, rich, poor, didn't matter to James. Everyone needs a hot meal and kindness, he used to say. When had she become this person? Clara threw the dish rag down and pushed through the door. The evening air hit her face, cooler now, as shadows stretched across Main Street. Mr. Walker. Marcus stopped, but didn't turn. She hurried toward him, breath coming short. Her hip ached, arthritis acting up again. Please, let me, I need to apologize properly. No need, ma'am. There is. She came around to face him. Had to look up. He stood a full head taller. What I said in there, that was ugly. Ugly and wrong. Marcus's eyes stayed focused somewhere past her shoulder. We all say things sometimes. Don't make excuses for me. Clara's voice shook. I heard you talking to your little girl, heard the love in your voice. And I still said—" She couldn't repeat it. That came from somewhere dark in me, somewhere I'm ashamed of. A pickup truck rumbled past, country music spilling from its windows. Marcus shifted his weight, clearly wanting to leave, but too polite to walk away mid-conversation. "Let me fix you something, a proper meal, on the house." "That's kind, but—" "For your daughter, then. Grace, right? Let me box something up for Grace." Marcus's jaw tightened at his daughter's name. "We're fine, ma'am." "Please." The word came out desperate. Clara didn't know why this mattered so much, only that it did. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes, green beans, cornbread, got fresh pie, too, apple. He looked at her then, really looked. She saw herself reflected in his eyes, an old woman in a grease-spotted apron, gray hair escaping from bobby pins, face lined with years of laughter and grief. When had she gotten so old, so bitter? "Why?" Marcus asked. The simple question undid her. "Because I was wrong, because you're tired and hungry and trying to take care of your baby, because my husband would have—" Her voice caught. "James would have invited you to sit at our own table, would have sent you home with leftovers for a week." The sun dipped lower, painting Marcus's face gold. He studied her for a long moment. "All right, for Grace?" Clara's breath rushed out. "Wait here. No, come back inside. Sit while I pack it up." "I'll wait here." She understood. The diner felt different now, poisoned by her words. She hurried inside, hands shaking as she pulled containers from beneath the counter. Loaded meatloaf, extra gravy, mashed potatoes enough for 2 meals, green beans with bacon, 4 pieces of cornbread wrapped in foil, 2 slices of pie. The food barely fit in the box. She added plastic forks, napkins, salt and pepper packets. Then remembered, milk for the little girl. She filled a to-go cup, snapped on a lid. Marcus stood where she'd left him, watching the sky fade from gold to purple. She handed him the box, heavier than expected. "This is too much." "It's not enough, not nearly enough." He balanced the box against his hip, careful with the milk. "Thank you. Will your car? Do you need a ride?" "I'll manage." Always managing, always making do. Clara recognized the dance, had done it herself after James died. Pride the only thing left when everything else fell apart. Marcus walked away, box in his arms like treasure. Each step took him further into the gathering dark. Clara stood in the doorway of her empty diner, fluorescent lights harsh against the evening. The words she'd spoken earlier seemed to echo off the buildings, bounce back at her. Trash. She'd called a good man trash, a father, a human being. Her chest hurt, not her heart. That was strong as ever, something deeper, something that might never heal quite right. Steam rose from Clara's coffee pot at 4:30 in the morning. She'd been up since 3, couldn't sleep for thinking about yesterday. The diner wouldn't open for another hour, but routine steadied her nerves. Bacon in the oven, biscuit dough rising, coffee strong enough to strip paint. The bell jangled at 5:30 sharp. Her regulars, farmers mostly, men who remembered when her James was alive. "Morning, Clara." Bill Henderson slid onto his usual stool, John Deere cap pushed back on his weathered head. "Coffee's fresh." She poured without asking. Black, no sugar. 20 years of the same order. Tom Reynolds and Eddie Marsh took their spots. The morning crowd assembled like clockwork. Clara moved between griddle and coffee pot, ham sizzling, eggs over easy. Comfortable rhythm until Margaret Henley walked in. Margaret ran the beauty salon 2 blocks over, knew everyone's business, and shared it freely. "Clara Thompson, what on earth happened yesterday evening?" Margaret's voice carried across the diner. "Saw you running down Main Street after that Walker fellow." Clara's spatula paused over the eggs. "Nothing happened." "Didn't look like nothing. Louise saw the whole thing from her porch, said he was in here causing trouble." "Nobody caused any trouble." Clara flipped the eggs harder than necessary. Yolk broke, yellow bleeding across white. Bill Henderson leaned forward. "The Walker boy? Works at Jimmy's garage, doesn't he?" 3 jobs, I heard, Tom added. Garage, night stocking at the Piggly Wiggly, weekend construction. Man works that many jobs. Maybe he should manage his money better, Eddie said. Margaret's eyes glittered. Louise said you gave him food, just handed him a whole box. So what if I did? Well, word gets out you're giving free meals. Every deadbeat in the county will line up at your door. Clara's hand tightened on the coffee pot handle. The men shifted on their stools, sensing storm weather. Heard his car broke down again, Bill said, trying to smooth things over. Jimmy says it's more rust than metal at this point. Maybe if he didn't spend money on... Eddie stopped, but the implication hung thick as bacon grease. On what? Clara's voice dropped low. Dangerous. On what exactly, Eddie? You know, whatever those people spend money on. Those people. Clara set the coffee pot down before she threw it. That man works 3 jobs to feed his daughter. When's the last time you worked 1 full day, Eddie? When's the last time any of us went hungry so a child could eat? Silence fell heavy. Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a caught fish. Clara, Bill said carefully, nobody's saying anything against the man personally. Then what are you saying? Tom studied his eggs. Just that if you start handing out free food, others will expect the same. Bad for business. My business is mine to run. Course it is. Margaret's tone turned syrup sweet. We're just concerned. First it's 1 free meal, then another, then, before you know it... Before I know it, what? I'll go broke feeding hungry people? James and I built this place on kindness. Fed folks during the Depression who couldn't pay. Fed them during the recession, too. That was different, Eddie muttered. How? Nobody answered. Marcus held Grace's hand as they walked toward Millwood Elementary. Morning sun caught in her braided hair, tied with yellow ribbons he'd found at the dollar store. Her backpack bounced with each skip step. Daddy, that dinner last night was so good. Grace swung their joined hands. The meatloaf had gravy and everything, and pie. We haven't had pie in forever. Miss Clara was being nice. Can we go back? Maybe she needs help in her diner. I could sweep floors or wash dishes. I'm good at dishes now, remember? You taught me how to get them really clean. Marcus's chest tightened. 8 years old and already thinking about working. You focus on school, baby girl. That's your job. But if I helped, maybe we could fix the car. Grace, he stopped, knelt to her level. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, but his voice stayed gentle. The car will get fixed. Everything's going to be fine. Promise? Promise. She threw her arms around his neck, squeezed tight. He breathed in her scent, soap and innocence, and something uniquely Grace. His reason for everything. They passed the hardware store where Ron Baker and 2 other men stood drinking coffee. Heard Clara Thompson's lost her mind, Ron said. Giving handouts now. Walker boy knows how to work the system, another replied. Gets the women feeling sorry for him. Marcus's hand tightened around Grace's. Keep walking. Don't listen. Daddy, why are they talking about Miss Clara? Don't know, baby. But Ron's voice carried. 3 jobs and still can't pay for food? Something doesn't add up. Probably sending money back to up. Marcus pulled Grace closer, walked faster. The men's laughter followed them down the sidewalk. Welfare queen, with a sob story. Know how those people are? Grace looked up at him, questions in her eyes he couldn't answer. The school came into view, brick and safety and normalcy. He walked her to the door where Mrs. Patterson waited, greeting each child. Morning, Mr. Walker. Grace? Morning, he kissed Grace's forehead. Learned something amazing today. I will, Daddy. She disappeared inside, yellow ribbons bouncing. Marcus stood a moment, watching through the glass door as she joined her classmates. Normal little girl in a normal school, everything he worked for. The walk back took him past the hardware store again. The men had gone inside, but their words lingered like smoke. Handouts, welfare, those people. His phone buzzed. Jimmy from the garage. Need you early today if possible. Marcus typed back. On my way. No time to feel shame. No energy for anger, just the next job, the next shift, the next dollar toward keeping Grace fed and safe and innocent as long as possible. Clara flipped the sign to "closed" and surveyed the empty diner. Chairs upturned on tables, floor mopped, register counted, everything in its place except a backpack slumped in the corner booth like a forgotten child, brown canvas frayed at the seams, one strap held together with duct tape. She approached it slowly, as if it might bite. Inside, a grease-stained work uniform from Jimmy's garage, a second shirt from the grocery store, name tag still attached. Marcus W. A third uniform she didn't recognize, some factory logo. The smell of motor oil and exhaustion rose from the fabric. At the bottom, wrapped in plastic, a child's drawing. Crayon stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. Daddy and Me written in careful letters. Clara's throat closed. She held the backpack its weight nothing compared to what it represented. 3 jobs, 3 uniforms, one father trying to hold the world together with duct tape and determination. The walk to the edge of town took 20 minutes. Past the nice houses with their neat lawns, past the middle-class neighborhoods with toys scattered in yards, down to where the town forgot to care. Small houses crowded together, paint peeling, porches sagging under the weight of years. Marcus's place sat at the end of Hollow Street. 1 story, probably 2 bedrooms at most. The porch light flickered, loose connection, or dying bulb. A child's bike leaned against the steps, pink with training wheels, bought used from the look of it. Clara knocked, clutching the backpack, and a casserole dish she'd grabbed from her kitchen. Foolish. Should have called first. Should have. The door opened. Grace stood there in pajamas covered in cartoon princesses, feet bare. "Miss Clara!" Her face lit up like Christmas morning. "Hello, sweetheart. Is your daddy home?" "He's washing dishes. We don't have a dishwasher machine, so we do them by hand. I dry because I'm good at not dropping them." Pride colored her words. "Want to come in?" Before Clara could answer, Marcus appeared behind his daughter. Wariness tightened his features when he saw her. "Miss Clara." "You left this." She held up the backpack. "At the diner. Thought you might need it." His shoulders dropped. "Thank you. He rubbed his face. "Double shift tomorrow. Need those uniforms." Grace tugged his shirt. "Daddy, invite her in. That's what polite people do." "Grace." "Please?" Marcus stepped aside. Clara entered, trying not to stare. The living room held a couch that had seen better decades, a coffee table made from a wooden crate, and not much else. Clean, though. Spotless, actually. Every surface scrubbed, everything in its place. Through the kitchen doorway, she glimpsed a small table with 2 chairs. Grace's homework spread across it, Marcus's careful handwriting in the margins where he'd helped her. "Thank you for bringing this." Marcus took the backpack, set it by the door. "You didn't have to come all this way." "I brought this too." Clara lifted the casserole dish. Chicken and rice, made too much for one person. Grace's stomach growled loud enough to hear across the room. The child slapped her hand over her belly, embarrassed. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, defeat shadowed his face. "Grace, get plates, please." "We can use the good ones." The good ones turned out to be mismatched china, probably from Goodwill. Grace set them on the coffee table with the reverence of a priest preparing communion. Clara's casserole disappeared in minutes. Grace ate with focus, savoring each bite. Marcus ate slower, mechanically, like a man too tired to taste. "This is really good, Miss Clara," Grace said around a mouthful. "You cook way better than Daddy. He burns everything." "I do not burn everything. You burned water once." That was... Marcus actually smiled. Small, brief, but real. That was a complicated situation. Clara found herself almost smiling back. "How does someone burn water?" "You forget about it," Grace explained seriously. "And then the pot turns black, and the smoke alarm goes beep, 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 and Mrs. Henderson next door, though, comes to check if we're on fire." That happened once, twice. The second time was different. Grace giggled, and the sound filled the bare room like music. Clara stood. I should go. Thank you, Marcus said quietly. For the food, for bringing the bag. She looked at him, really looked. Exhaustion carved lines around his eyes. His hands bore the cuts and calluses of hard labor, but he stood straight, dignity intact despite everything. You're welcome. Grace hugged her suddenly, fierce and quick. Come back soon. Clara patted the child's head awkwardly. We'll see. Marcus walked her to the door. On the porch he spoke low. I know what people are saying. About me. About you helping. You don't have to... I know what I have to do. He studied her face. Why? Because I called you trash. Because I saw your humanity only after I'd denied it. Because my husband would be ashamed of me. Because it's right. She left before he could respond, walking home under stars that seemed both closer and further away than before. Behind her, a small house held a father and daughter, making the best of little. Ahead, her own house sat empty and too large, full of things that suddenly seemed meaningless. The night air carried the sound of Grace's laughter, Marcus's low voice reading a bedtime story through the open window. Clara walked faster but couldn't outrun the truth settling into her bones. She'd been poor in ways that had nothing to do with money. The lunch rush brought its usual crowd, but Clara noticed the sideways glances. Earl Simmons held court at the corner table, his voice carrying over the clink of silverware. Standards matter in this business. Earl stabbed his fork into his pie. You start serving just anybody. Next thing you know, your regulars find somewhere else to eat. Now, Earl, Betty Mason said, though her tone suggested agreement, Clara runs a respectable place. Does she? Saw her chasing after that Walker fellow the other night, giving out charity meals? Earl's laugh had edges. That's not running a business, that's running a soup kitchen. Clara's hand tightened on the coffee pot. She moved between the tables, refilling cups, pretending not to hear. Clara, Earl called out, settle something for us? You planning to put up a sign? Free food for folks who can't pay? Everyone pays here, her voice came out steady enough. That's so? Because I heard different. The diner quieted. Forks paused mid-bite. Earl's rivalry with her went back years. He owned Earl's Steakhouse 2 blocks over and resented every customer who chose her home-style cooking over his overpriced cuts. You heard wrong. Did I? Earl leaned back, chair creaking. Look, I'm just trying to help. You keep lowering your standards, letting in people like Marcus Walker, and this place'll go under faster than you can say bankruptcy. Marcus Walker is a customer like anyone else. A customer who can't afford more than coffee. Heat crawled up Clara's neck. That's none of your business. It is when it affects the whole street. We've worked hard to keep this area respectable, clean, safe. Earl's smile turned sharp. Your husband understood that. Shame he's not here to remind you. The coffee pot shook in her grip. Robert had understood dignity, respect, treating every soul who walked through the door like they mattered. My husband. The word stuck. What would Robert say? That she'd betrayed everything they'd built? That she'd let fear and prejudice poison their dream? Your husband knew how to run a proper establishment, Earl finished. Maybe you should remember that. Clara set down the coffee pot before she threw it. You finished with your pie, Earl? Matter of fact, I am. He stood, tossed money on the table. Think about what I said, for your own good. The bell jangled as he left. Conversations slowly resumed, but Clara felt the weight of judgment in every whisper. That afternoon she stood in the kitchen, staring at the photo of Robert she kept above the stove. His smile seemed sad now, disappointed maybe. I'm trying, she whispered. I don't know what's right anymore. The auto shop smelled like oil and resignation. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag already black with grease, as his boss, Jim, shuffled papers on his desk. Times are tight, Marcus, you understand? Yes, sir. I can only give you 20 hours next week, maybe less the week after. 20 hours. Rent was due in 10 days. Grace needed new shoes. The sole was coming off her left one. The electricity bill sat on his kitchen table, marked Final Notice. I understand. Jim looked uncomfortable. It's not personal. You're a good worker, best I've had, but folks aren't getting their cars fixed like they used to. I know. You'll find something else. Man like you, hard-working. Thank you for keeping me on at all. Marcus left before Jim could offer more empty comfort. The walk home stretched longer than usual, each step heavy with the weight of shrinking options. Grace sat on the front steps, homework in her lap. Why are you outside, baby? It's brighter out here. She held up her math worksheet. Mrs. Johnson says I'm getting really good at fractions. The power must have cut again. Third time this week. Marcus sat beside her, pulled her close. That's wonderful. Fractions are important. For what? For... He searched for an answer that mattered. For dividing up good things fairly. Like cake? Exactly like cake. They worked through her homework as the sun sank low, using the fading light until the numbers blurred. Inside, Marcus lit the candles he'd bought at the dollar store. Grace pulled out their bedtime book, the same one they'd been reading for months, the library copy long overdue, but neither of them mentioned it. Once upon a time, Grace read, tracing the words with her finger, there lived a brave knight who had very little, but gave very much. Marcus watched the candlelight dance across her face. 20 hours. How do you stretch 20 hours to cover a life? Daddy, you okay? Just tired, baby. You're always tired. She snuggled against him. When I grow up, I'm going to get a job and you can rest. That's not your job. Your job is to be a kid. Then when do I get to take care of you? The question broke something in his chest. You already do. Every day. Clara's bedroom felt too big, too empty. She'd slept alone for 3 years now, but tonight the absence of Robert felt fresh as a new wound. Earl's words circled like vultures, lowering your standards. But then Marcus's face rose in her mind, the quiet way he'd accepted her cruelty, the dignity in his straight shoulders as he walked away, the careful way he'd cut the casserole into portions, making sure Grace got the biggest piece. She thought of her diner, the pride she took in its polished tables and steady customers. When had it stopped being about feeding people and become about maintaining appearances? Robert used to say, the measure of a place wasn't its prettiest customer, but how it treated its hungriest. She'd served bankers and teachers, truckers and widows. But the moment a tired black father walked in, she'd shown her true colors. I don't want trash in my restaurant. The words echoed in the darkness. She pulled Robert's pillow close, breathing in the scent that had long since faded. Somewhere across town, a father and daughter read by candlelight. Somewhere, Earl Simmons probably slept sound, confident in his righteousness. And Clara lay awake, wondering when she'd become someone her husband wouldn't recognize. 3 days passed like a held breath. Clara packed and unpacked the grocery bag 4 times, adding items, removing them, second-guessing every choice. A loaf of bread too basic? Fresh vegetables? Would they spoil? Finally, she settled on practical things. Pasta, canned sauce, milk, eggs, apples that wouldn't bruise easily. The walk to Marcus's house stretched longer in daylight. Every neighbor's glance felt like judgment. Mrs. Henderson watered her petunias and watched Clara pass with narrowed eyes. Tom Bradley paused his lawn mowing to stare. Let them look. Let them talk. Marcus sat on his porch, bent over the open hood of his car, which he'd somehow gotten home. Grace played with chalk on the sidewalk, drawing flowers in pink and yellow. Tools spread across an old blanket, borrowed, Clara could tell by the mismatched handles and the careful way Marcus set each one down after use. Miss Clara? Grace jumped up, chalk dust on her hands. Look, I drew our house. The drawing showed a small square with a triangle roof, 2 stick figures holding hands outside. Above them, a bright sun smiled down. Marcus straightened slowly, a wrench in his hand. Oil stained his shirt. Dark circles shadowed his eyes deeper than before. "Miss Thompson," Clara held out the bag, her prepared speech scattered like startled birds. "I was wrong." The words fell between them, heavy and raw. Marcus set down the wrench, wiped his hands on a rag, waited. "What I said in the diner. It was cruel and wrong, and I—" Her voice cracked. "I'm ashamed. You came in tired and hungry, worried about your daughter, and I called you—" She couldn't repeat it. "I judged you without knowing anything about you." Grace looked between them, confusion clouding her face. "My husband Robert would be so disappointed in me. He believed in treating everyone with dignity. He would have—" Tears burned her eyes. "He would have given you his own supper and counted it a privilege." Marcus took the grocery bag, set it on the porch step. His movements stayed measured, careful. "Thank you for the food." "That's not— I'm not looking for thanks. I'm trying to say I'm sorry." "I heard you." The simple words held no anger, no bitterness. Somehow that made it worse. "I don't expect forgiveness," Clara continued. "I know words like mine don't just disappear, but I want you to know I see what I did. I see who I was in that moment." Marcus glanced at Grace, who had gone back to her chalk but was clearly listening. "Miss Thompson, I appreciate you coming here. I appreciate the food. My daughter and I will eat well because of it." He didn't say he forgave her, didn't say it was okay, but he didn't turn her away either. "Grace," he called softly, "come say thank you to Miss Clara." The little girl bounced over, chalk-dusted hands clasped in front of her. "Thank you, Miss Clara. The casserole last time was really good. Daddy saved some for my lunch the next day." Clara's throat tightened. "You're welcome, sweetheart." She turned to leave, then stopped. "The car, is it the transmission?" "Alternator." Marcus picked up the wrench again. "Should have it running by tomorrow." "Jake's Auto Parts might have a used one. He sometimes—" She stopped. Who was she to give advice? Well, good luck. The walk home blurred through tears. She'd apologized, but the weight on her chest hadn't lifted. If anything, it pressed heavier. Marcus's dignity made her shame sharper. He could have raged at her, could have thrown her apology back in her face. Instead, he'd accepted her words without absolving her, taken the food without pretending everything was fixed. That was real strength. Not the kind that fought back, but the kind that endured without becoming bitter. That night, Marcus sat on Grace's bed, their library book closed between them. "Daddy, why was Miss Clara crying?" Marcus chose his words like he chose his tools, carefully, purposefully. Sometimes people say things they don't mean when they're scared or upset. Was she scared of us? Not exactly. Sometimes people are scared of things being different than what they're used to. Grace twisted her blanket between her fingers. "But we're not scary." "No, baby, we're not. I think Miss Clara is trying to be nice." Marcus smoothed her hair, felt the weight of the day in his bones. 20 hours at the shop this week, rent due in 7 days. The alternator might last another month if he nursed it. "I think she is too." "So we can be friends?" The question hung in the darkness. Could trust rebuild after breaking? Could words be taken back once they'd carved their marks? "We'll see." That means no. That means we'll see. Grace sighed the way only 8-year-olds could, full of drama and disappointment. "I like Miss Clara. She looks sad like you sometimes." After Grace fell asleep, Marcus stood at the window, looking at the lights of town. Somewhere out there, Clara Thompson was probably looking out her own window. Clara stood at her bedroom window, staring at the neon diner sign that had buzzed outside for 15 years. Clara's Diner, in red cursive, Robert's idea of romance when they'd bought the place. The heart of her life's work. The things she'd built, maintained, protected. Now it felt like a question mark. What was a diner, if not a place to feed the hungry? What was she protecting it from? Families like Marcus and Grace, who needed nothing more than a meal and a moment of peace. She thought of Grace's chalk drawing, the little house, the 2 figures holding hands, the bright sun above. So much hope in those simple lines. She thought of Marcus, fixing his car with borrowed tools, making 20-hour stretch to cover a life. Tomorrow, she'd open the diner, like always. Serve coffee, take orders, wipe tables. But something had shifted, maybe broken, maybe begun to mend. The heart of her life's work was no longer just the building with its red neon sign. It was tied now, whether she liked it or not, to a tired father and a hopeful daughter she'd once dismissed with the cruelest word. Trash. The word would follow her now, not as something she'd called them, but as something she'd revealed about herself. The sign buzzed and flickered. Clara touched the cold window glass, her reflection ghost-like against the night. Marcus held Grace's hand as they walked toward the elementary school. Morning fog clung to the ground, and the town was just waking up. Mrs. Henderson swept her porch across the street. She looked up, saw them, and turned away without her usual wave. At the corner, Jim Bradley loaded his truck. Marcus nodded. Jim's eyes slid past him, like he wasn't there. Grace skipped beside him, humming something from music class. She didn't notice the turned backs, the quick glances, the whispers that followed them like shadows. "Have a good day, baby." Marcus kissed the top of her head at the school gate. "You too, Daddy. Maybe today will be better. Maybe it will." She ran toward the building, backpack bouncing. Marcus watched until she disappeared inside, then straightened his shoulders and walked toward the auto shop. Head high, back straight. The same walk his father had taught him. Dignity didn't depend on what others thought. Clara wiped the same section of counter for the third time. The breakfast rush had ended, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the coffee maker's gurgle. She'd brought them food, apologized. But it wasn't enough. The words, her words, still hung in the air of this place. Every booth, every table remembered what she'd said. The cash register drawer stuck when she opened it. Robert used to fix that with a tap just right of the handle. She'd never learned his trick. "Just bring people together, Clara," he'd said near the end, tubes and machines turning his voice thin. "That's all a diner needs to do." She'd protected his dream the only way she knew, keeping it successful, profitable, respectable, but somewhere she'd lost the heart of it. The bell jingled. Marcus stood in the doorway, work shirt already marked with grease. "Just coffee, please." She poured it black the way he'd ordered before. He sat at the counter this time, not the booth. Closer, but still careful. "Lunch break?" 20 minutes." He wrapped his hands around the mug. Clara's fingers twisted her dish rag. The words had been circling her mind all morning, and now they tumbled out. "I'd like to send something home with you, for Grace, for dinner." His jaw tightened. "We're managing." "I know you are. I'm not. This isn't charity, just neighbors. The way things used to be when people looked out for each other." Marcus studied his coffee. Steam rose between them. "My husband, Robert, he used to say a diner was successful when nobody left hungry. Not just the people who could pay full price. Everyone." "Miss Clara." "Please, let me do this right." The shop's noon whistle blew in the distance. Marcus checked his watch. 15 minutes left. "All right. As neighbors." Clara's breath rushed out. "Thank you." She disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a paper bag, warm and heavy. "Fried chicken, biscuits, green beans, the way my mama made them." Marcus paid for his coffee, exact change. Pride had its own currency. That evening, Grace's eyes went wide when Marcus unpacked the bag. "Real fried chicken, and it's still warm." The smell filled their small kitchen. Butter, herbs, home. Not the cheap ramen they'd been stretching all week. Marcus fixed their plates, giving Grace the biggest piece. She bit into a biscuit, and her whole face lit up. "This is like Thanksgiving." They ate without rushing. For once, there was enough, more than enough. Marcus's stomach had been tight for so long, he'd forgotten what full felt like, satisfied, not calculating how many hours until the next meal, how many days until payday. Grace licked her fingers clean. "Can I have another piece?" "Go ahead, baby." She selected a drumstick, then paused. "Daddy, You should have more too. I'm good. No, you're not. You gave me most of yours yesterday. Had he been that obvious? He took another piece, if only to ease the worry in her eyes. After dinner, Grace helped wash dishes. Their ritual, her on a step stool, him washing, her drying with a towel that swallowed her small hands. See, Daddy? Miss Clara is being nice. Marcus scrubbed the plate harder than necessary. Seems like it. You don't believe her. Sometimes Grace saw too much. 8 years old with old eyes. It's complicated, baby. No, it's not. She was mean. Now she's sorry. She's trying to fix it. Sometimes sorry isn't enough. Grace set down her towel. Then what is? He didn't have an answer. Trust was like his car's engine. Once something broke, even fixed, you always listened for that sound again, waited for it to fail. But Grace wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her face against his work shirt that still smelled like motor oil and effort. Miss Clara made us dinner. We ate until we were full. That's enough for today. Marcus held his daughter close. Maybe she was right. Maybe enough for today was all anyone could ask for. Outside, evening painted the sky purple. Somewhere across town, Clara was probably closing up the diner, wondering if she'd done the right thing. Marcus looked at the empty containers, thought of Grace's smile, her full belly, the way she'd hummed while drying dishes. A faint smile touched his lips. Still doubt lingered like fog that wouldn't lift. But for tonight, his daughter was fed and happy. Maybe that was enough. 3 days passed before Clara made her next move. She arrived at the diner before dawn, changed the menu board, and added a new line at the bottom. Community Special, Ask Inside. Her first regular, Tom Bradley, squinted at it over his glasses. What's a community special? Half-price meals for folks who need them. Clara refilled his coffee, avoiding his eyes. Times are hard. Tom grunted. About time. The morning crowd filtered in. Farmers, shop workers, the church ladies who met every Thursday. Word spread in whispers and glances. By noon, a young mother Clara had never seen before came in, baby on her hip, counting change in her palm. I heard about the special? Clara nodded, wrote the order down. No questions, no judgment, just food. The woman left with tears in her eyes and a bag full of sandwiches. Margaret Henley, who owned the flower shop, cornered Clara by the register. Since when do you run a charity? Since I remembered what my husband built this place for. Margaret's mouth pursed like she'd bitten a lemon, but she said nothing more. That evening, after the dinner rush, Clara struggled with the front door. The hinge had been squeaking for months, getting worse each day. She'd meant to call someone, but pride kept her trying to fix everything herself. Marcus appeared at closing time, toolbox in hand. Heard you had a door problem. Who told you that? Grace, she notices things. He knelt by the door examining the hinge. Got some WD-40, but this needs replacing. Hardware store's closed, but I've got spare hinges in my truck. Clara watched him work, precise and careful. His hands moved with the same dignity he carried in everything. No wasted motion, no shortcuts. You don't have to... Door needs fixing. I know how to fix it. She brought him coffee while he worked. Black, no sugar. They fell into rhythm, him adjusting the door, her holding it steady. Robert built this place himself, she said. Every nail, every board. Took him 3 years. He did good work. Bones of this place are solid. He was a carpenter before he opened it, said he wanted to build something that would last. Marcus tightened a screw. My wife, Denise, she loved places like this, said they had soul. Clara's hand stilled on the door. He rarely mentioned his wife. When did she pass? 5 years ago. Cancer took her when Grace was 3. His voice stayed even, but his hands paused. Doctor said 6 months. She fought for 2 years. That must have been hard. Yeah. He tested the door's swing. But she got to see Grace walk, hear her first words. That was everything to her. Clara remembered Robert's last days, how he'd fought for every sunrise, every conversation. Robert had a heart attack in the kitchen. right there by the grill. I held him while we waited for the ambulance, but he was gone before they arrived. I'm sorry. 10 years next month. She steadied the door as Marcus adjusted the bottom hinge. Some days it feels like yesterday, others like a lifetime. Know what you mean. Sometimes Grace does something, laughs a certain way, tilts her head, and it's Denise all over again, breaks me and heals me at the same time. The door swung smooth and silent now. Marcus packed his tools. Grace is all I see when I look ahead, he continued. Everything I do is for her. But sometimes it gets lonely. Their eyes met. Understanding passed between them, not pity but recognition. Two people who knew what it meant to carry on alone. Marcus pulled out his wallet. What do I owe you for the coffee? Nothing. You fixed my door. Door was a favor. Coffee's business. He placed exact change on the counter. Clara started to push it back, then stopped. She saw it now, the straight back, the lifted chin. This wasn't stubbornness. It was the architecture of a man who'd built himself up from loss, brick by brick. Take that away and everything might crumble. She rang up the sale, put the money in the register. Thank you for your business, Mr. Walker. Thank you for the coffee, Miss Clara. He turned to leave, then paused. The community special. That's a good thing you're doing. It's what Robert would have done, what he did do, before I forgot. Marcus nodded. He sounds like he was a good man. He was. And Denise sounds like she was special. The best. After he left, Clara stood in her empty diner. The door opened and closed without a sound. She ran her hand along the counter Robert had sanded smooth, looked at the walls lined with pictures of customers over the years. Some gone now, like Robert, like Denise, but life continued. Grace would come in tomorrow with Marcus, bright-eyed and hungry. The young mother would return for the community special. Tom Bradley would grunt over his coffee and leave too large a tip. Clara turned off the lights. Outside, Marcus's truck rumbled to life, headlights cutting through the darkness as he headed home to Grace. She locked the door, smooth and quiet now, and walked to her car. For the first time in years, the diner felt like Robert's place again, not a monument to the past, but something living, breathing, serving. The fog of grief that had settled over everything was finally starting to lift. Saturday morning arrived crisp and bright. Clara stood in the diner at 5 a.m., flour dusting her apron, as she rolled out pie crust after pie crust. Apple, pecan, sweet potato, Robert's recipes, every one. She'd posted the flyers 3 days ago. Community night at Clara's. Live music, home cooking, all welcome. The response split the town down the middle. About time somebody did something good around here, Tom Bradley had said, promising to bring his harmonica. But Earl Simmons hadn't been so kind. She'd heard him holding court at his place across town, that chrome and vinyl monstrosity he called Earl's Eatery. Clara Thompson's lost her mind, he'd told anyone who'd listen. Turning that place into a soup kitchen. Next thing you know, we'll have every deadbeat in 3 counties lining up for handouts. The words stung, but Clara kept rolling dough. Each pie was a small rebellion against Earl's meanness, against the hardness that had crept into her own heart these past years. By noon, volunteers started arriving. Mrs. Henderson brought her famous cornbread. The Johnson twins hauled in their father's old amplifier. Even young Katie Miller, who waitressed part-time, showed up on her day off. "Where do you want the stage?" Katie asked. "Stage?" "For the music. Can't have folks singing from the floor." They pushed tables together near the back wall, creating a makeshift platform. Katie strung lights she'd brought from home, soft white bulbs that turned the diner golden. Marcus arrived at 4 with Grace, toolbox in hand. "Heard you might need help setting up." "I've got it handled." "That amplifier needs grounding, or someone's getting shocked." He was already checking connections. "Grace, help Miss Clara with those tablecloths." Grace bounced over, eager to help. They worked in comfortable rhythm, Clara directing, Grace chattering about school, her art project, the new library books she'd checked out. Daddy doesn't know I signed him up, Grace whispered. Signed him up for what? To sing. I put his name on the list you had by the register. Clara glanced at Marcus, who was explaining electrical safety to the Johnson twins. Does he know? Not yet. But he sings at home when he thinks I'm asleep, Mama's favorite songs. By 6 o'clock, people started arriving. Not the flood Clara had hoped for, but steady trickles. Families she recognized, the young mother with 3 kids, old Mr. Peterson, who lived on Social Security, the Ramirez family from the edge of town. Earl Simmons stood across the street, arms folded, watching. Clara saw him through the window but turned away. Tonight wasn't about Earl. Tom Bradley kicked things off with his harmonica, playing Amazing Grace with more enthusiasm than skill. The crowd clapped anyway. Katie sang a country song, voice sweet but nervous. The Johnson twins attempted comedy that earned more groans than laughs. Next up, Clara announced, checking her list, Marcus Walker. Marcus's head snapped up from where he sat with Grace. I did, Daddy. Grace pushed him forward. For Mama. The diner went quiet. Everyone knew Marcus Walker worked hard, stayed quiet, kept his head down. Nobody knew he could sing. He stood slowly, walked to the makeshift stage. No guitar, no accompaniment, just Marcus, standing in the golden light, looking at his daughter. This was Denise's favorite, he said. Then he sang. His voice rolled out deep and rich, filling every corner of the diner. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. The old hymn transformed in his throat, becoming something raw and beautiful. Pain and hope twisted together in every note. Clara's hand went to her chest. Around her she saw tears on faces, Mrs. Henderson dabbing her eyes, Tom Bradley's harmonica forgotten in his lap, even the teenage Johnson twins sitting silent and still. Marcus sang like a man who'd walked through fire and found faith on the other side. His voice carried the weight of loss, but also something else, resilience, maybe, or grace. When he finished, the silence stretched for a heartbeat. Then Grace started clapping, loud and proud, and the diner erupted. Marcus ducked his head, embarrassed by the attention, but Grace ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. That was beautiful, someone called out. Sing another one. Marcus shook his head, returning to his seat, but something had shifted in the room. The careful distance people had kept melted away. Conversation sparked between strangers. The young mother shared a table with Mrs. Henderson. Mr. Peterson taught the Ramirez children a card trick. Clara moved through it all, refilling coffee, serving pie, watching her diner transform. Laughter bounced off the walls. Someone started an impromptu dance when Tom played an upbeat tune. Grace pulled Marcus up, and they swayed together, her feet on his shoes like she was 3 instead of 8. This was what Robert had built, not just a restaurant, but a gathering place. A home for anyone who needed one. Earl Simmons had disappeared from across the street. Clara didn't care. Let him mock from his chrome palace. This, the warmth, the connection, the community, this was worth more than his approval would ever be. Near closing time, Marcus approached the counter. Thank you, he said, for letting Grace sign me up, for... He gestured at the still buzzing diner. This. Thank you for singing. I didn't know you could... Denise made me promise to keep music in Grace's life. Been failing at that lately. Doesn't look like failure from here. They stood there, surrounded by the gentle chaos of community night, and Clara felt something she hadn't experienced in 10 years. Hope. Marcus walked Grace to school with a lightness in his step that surprised him. The morning sun painted the sidewalks gold, and for once the weight on his shoulders felt manageable. You were amazing last night, Daddy. You tricked me into it. But you weren't mad. Grace swung their joined hands. Mrs. Henderson said, you have the voice of an angel. Mrs. Henderson needs her hearing checked. Grace giggled, skipping beside him. Other parents nodded as they passed, not the cold acknowledgement of before, but something warmer. The Martinez family waved. Tom Bradley called out a greeting from his porch. At the school gates, Grace hugged him tight. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, baby girl." She ran off, pigtails bouncing, joining a cluster of friends. Marcus watched until she disappeared inside, then headed to the auto shop. At the diner, Clara hummed while brewing fresh coffee. The morning rush felt different, lighter somehow. Customers chatted about community night, sharing stories, making plans for the next one. "Best evening we've had in years," Mrs. Henderson declared, settling into her usual booth. "That Walker boy can sing." "He certainly can." Clara poured coffee with steady hands. "You did good, Clara. Robert would be proud." The words warmed Clara more than the steam from the coffee pot. She moved between tables, taking orders, catching fragments of conversation. The diner buzzed with energy that had nothing to do with caffeine. Across town, Earl Simmons sat in his gleaming restaurant, watching his half-empty dining room. His coffee tasted bitter. His new chrome fixtures reflected too bright light. He picked up his phone, dialed a number. "Jim? Yeah, it's Earl. You hear about Clara's little charity show last night?" He listened, jaw tightening. "That's what I'm saying. She's turning Main Street into a homeless shelter. Bad for business, all of us." Another pause. "The Walker fellow? Oh, I got opinions about him. Man can't even keep his lights on. Heard they flickered out last week. What kind of father lets that happen?" At the auto shop, Marcus slid under a Chevy truck, wrench in hand. The work felt good, honest, straightforward. Fix what's broken. Make it run again. "Walker," his boss Dan called from the office. "When you're done, come see me." Marcus's stomach clenched. Those words usually meant trouble. He finished the oil change, wiped his hands, walked to the small office at the back. Dan looked up from paperwork. "Sit down." Marcus sat, trying to read his boss's weathered face. "Been watching you, Walker. 3 months now. Never late, never complain. Work circles around the younger guys." "Thank you, sir. Johnson's retiring end of the month. I need someone reliable for his shifts. Interested?" Marcus's heart jumped. "Yes, sir, absolutely. 20 more hours a week. Same rate for now, but we'll talk raise after Christmas." Thank you. Thank you so much." Dan waved him off. "Earned it. Now get back to work." Marcus floated through the rest of his shift. 20 more hours meant steady electricity, new shoes for Grace, maybe even saving a little. That evening, he stopped at the corner store, bought Grace's favorite, strawberry ice cream, a luxury they hadn't afforded in months. "What's this for?" Grace asked when he pulled it from the freezer. "Celebrating. Got more hours at the shop." She squealed, throwing her arms around him. They ate straight from the container, passing one spoon between them, Grace telling him about her day, the spelling test she aced, the library book about dolphins, how Tommy Chen shared his chocolate chip cookies at lunch. "Can we tell Miss Clara?" "Tell her what?" "About your new hours. She'll be happy." Marcus considered. Strange how quickly Clara had shifted from adversary to, what? Friend seemed too simple. Maybe tomorrow. Across town, Clara sat in her living room, photo album spread across the coffee table. Robert smiled up from their wedding photo, young, handsome, full of dreams about the diner they'd build together. She traced his face with one finger. "You'd like him, Robert. Marcus. He's got your kind of strength, the quiet kind." Another photo. Robert serving Thanksgiving dinner to folks who had nowhere else to go. Another. Him teaching neighborhood kids to flip pancakes. "I lost my way for a while. Got scared, I think. Scared of change, scared of, I don't know, everything." The house creaked around her, settling into evening. "But I'm finding it again. The thing you always said. That the diner wasn't ours. It belonged to everybody. I'm trying to remember that." She closed the album, stood, stretched. Through the window she could see the diner's sign glowing in the distance. Tomorrow she'd open early, brew fresh coffee, welcome whoever walked through the door. Earl could whisper all he wanted. She'd built something real at community night. Connection, warmth, belonging. No amount of gossip could tear that down. At least, that's what she told herself as she climbed the stairs to bed, unaware of the phone calls Earl had already made, the seeds of doubt he'd planted, the storm brewing just beyond the horizon. But tonight, Clara slept peacefully. Marcus counted ceiling tiles with hope instead of worry, and Grace dreamed of her father's voice filling the diner, making everyone cry happy tears. The knock came at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening. Marcus had just finished helping Grace with her math homework, multiplication tables, the sevens giving her trouble. They'd made a game of it, using dried beans to count out groups, 3 sharp raps. Official sounding, Marcus opened the door to find 2 women in professional clothes, badges clipped to their jackets. The taller one, gray-haired, with rimless glasses, spoke first. "Mr. Walker, I'm Janet Holloway from Child Protective Services. This is my colleague, Diane Marsh. May we come in?" The floor seemed to tilt. Marcus gripped the doorframe. "Is everything all right?" "Has something happened?" "We've received a report expressing concerns about your daughter's welfare. We need to ask you some questions." Grace appeared behind him, clutching her math workbook. "Daddy?" "Go to your room, baby. Finish your homework." "But—" "Please, Grace." She retreated slowly, throwing worried glances over her shoulder. Marcus stepped aside, let the women enter. They scanned the small living room, the patched couch, the flickering overhead bulb he'd been meaning to replace, Grace's drawings taped to every wall. "Mr. Walker, the report mentions financial instability." Janet pulled out a notebook. "Can you tell us about your employment?" "I work at Dan's auto shop. Just got more hours last week, 20 extra." "And before that?" "3 jobs, the shop, evening janitor work, weekend deliveries." Diane wrote something down. "The report also mentions periods without electricity." Marcus's chest tightened. "Once. The power flickered once during a storm. I had it back on within hours." "What about food insecurity?" He walked to the kitchen, opened cabinets. Clara's casserole dishes lined the shelves, along with the groceries she'd brought: bread, peanut butter, canned vegetables, pasta. "We have food, always have food." "These dishes," Janet gestured to the casseroles, "they're not yours?" "A neighbor helps sometimes. Clara Thompson, she owns the diner downtown." More writing. Marcus's hands shook. "Mr. Walker, we also need to discuss medical care. When did Grace last see a doctor?" 6 months ago, school checkup. She's healthy, never misses school, except when she had the flu last winter. Dental care? We're saving for that." The women exchanged glances. Janet stood, walked toward Grace's room. Marcus followed. "May I speak with her?" Marcus wanted to say no, wanted to throw them out, but knew that would make things worse. He nodded. Grace sat on her bed, workbook forgotten, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, Grace," Janet's voice softened. "I just want to talk to you a little. Is that okay?" Grace looked at Marcus. He forced a smile, nodded. "Does your daddy take good care of you?" "The best care. He works so hard. 3 jobs before, but now he got more hours so he doesn't have to be so tired." "Do you ever go hungry?" "No, ma'am. Sometimes we eat the same thing a lot, like beans and rice, but Daddy always makes sure I eat first." "What about when you're sick?" "Daddy stays up all night with me, makes me soup, reads stories." Janet asked more questions. About school, about clothes, about feeling safe. Grace answered them all, her small voice fierce with loyalty. Finally, the women prepared to leave. "We'll need to verify some information," Janet said at the door. "Employment records, school attendance. We may also schedule a home visit." "Am I going to lose her?" The words scraped Marcus's throat. "We're just investigating, Mr. Walker. Continue as you have been. We'll be in touch." They left. Marcus closed the door, slid down against it, head in his hands. Grace crawled into his lap. "Are they going to take me away?" "No, baby, never." But his voice cracked on the promise. An hour later, after Grace had cried herself to sleep, Marcus walked to the diner. Clara was closing up, chairs already on tables. "Marcus, what's wrong?" He told her everything, words tumbling out. Clara's face went white, then red. That snake. That jealous, bitter snake. You think Earl... Who else? Right after community night, right when things were looking up. She slammed a dish rag on the counter. I'll call them tomorrow. Tell them how much you've worked, how well you take care of Grace. Will it matter? Marcus slumped in a booth. Black man, single father, barely making ends meet. You know how this story goes. Don't talk like that. Why not? It's true. I work 16-hour days and it's still not enough. I can't even afford a dentist for my daughter. Marcus, I'm tired, Clara. Bone tired. Tired of fighting for scraps. Tired of people looking at me like I'm less than. Tired of having to prove I deserve to raise my own child. Clara sat across from him, reached for his hands. He pulled away. I won't let them take her. I know. I'll fight them. I'll fight everyone. You won't fight alone. He looked at her then, saw the determination in her eyes. For a moment, he almost believed her. Back home, Marcus stood in Grace's doorway watching her sleep. Her math workbook lay open on the nightstand. 7 times 7 equals 49. She'd gotten it right. He knelt beside her bed, clasped his hands. Lord, don't let them take her away from me. The prayer felt small in the darkness, but it was all he had left. 3 days crawled past like years. Marcus showed up at the auto shop each morning, but his hands fumbled with wrenches, his mind elsewhere. Twice he installed parts backward. His boss, Mr. Henderson, pulled him aside. Marcus, what's going on? This ain't like you. Just tired, sir. Henderson studied him. Take a break. Clear your head. But Marcus couldn't rest. Every quiet moment brought visions of Grace being taken away, crying for him while strangers loaded her into a car. At home, Grace noticed everything. She watched him push food around his plate, saw the dark circles deepening under his eyes. Daddy, why don't you sleep anymore? Just thinking about grown-up stuff, baby. Bad stuff? He forced a smile. Nothing for you to worry about. But she worried anyway, started setting the table without being asked, folded her clothes perfectly, did her homework twice to make sure it was right, as if being the perfect child might fix whatever was breaking her father apart. Clara, meanwhile, moved through town like a woman on a mission. She started at the church, finding Mrs. Lucille Hayes after Wednesday service. Lucille, you remember when your car broke down last winter? The elderly widow nodded. Marcus Walker fixed it. Wouldn't take a penny, even though I know he needed the money. Would you be willing to say that to Child Services? They're trying to take Grace. Lucille's hand flew to her chest. Lord have mercy. Of course I'll speak up. Next, Clara found Tommy Rodriguez at the library. The 17-year-old was hunched over textbooks. Tommy, Marcus tutored you in algebra last year, didn't he? Every Tuesday for 3 months. Wouldn't let me pay him either. Said education was too important to put a price on. Tommy's face darkened. Someone's really trying to take Grace? That's messed up. Would you write a letter? About his character? I'll write 10 letters if it helps. She visited 8 more people that week. Found stories everywhere. Marcus had helped Mr. Chen translate legal documents. Fixed the church's van when it broke down before a youth trip. Spent his lunch breaks teaching kids at the community center how to change oil. But for every person willing to help, 2 more whispered behind their hands. Earl Simmons made sure of that, holding court at his diner. Heard they found the Walker house in terrible condition. No proper heating, barely any food. That's not true, one customer protested. Earl shrugged. Just saying what I heard. Shame when people can't provide for their own children. Maybe the girl would be better off with a real family. The poison spread. People who'd smiled at Marcus last week now crossed the street to avoid him. Parents pulled their children away when Grace approached at school. Thursday evening, Marcus found the letter wedged under his door. Official letterhead. His hands trembled as he read. Mr. Walker, this letter confirms your custody hearing scheduled for Monday, November 15th at 2:00 p.m. You have the right to legal representation. The words blurred. He sank into a kitchen chair, letter falling from his fingers. Grace found him there an hour later, still staring at nothing. "Daddy?" He pulled her close, breathed in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Just tired, baby girl. You're always tired now. I know, I'm sorry. Did I do something wrong?" The question broke him. "No, God, no. You're perfect. You hear me? Perfect." She nestled against his chest. "Then why are you so sad?" He couldn't answer. Clara arrived after Grace had gone to bed. She knocked softly, and Marcus let her in without a word. Saw the letter on the table. "Monday, 4 days." Marcus nodded. "I've got 9 people ready to speak for you. More if we need them." "It won't matter." His voice was hollow. "You know how these things go. They've already decided." "Stop that." "It's true. Single black father, poor, no family support. They see what they want to see." Clara grabbed his shoulders. "Then we make them see different." "How?" "I can barely keep the lights on. Can't afford a lawyer. Can't even afford to take her to the dentist." "Marcus." "I work every hour God gives me, and it's still not enough. Maybe—" He choked on the words. "Maybe she would be better off." Clara's hand cracked across his face. Not hard, but enough to shock him silent. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare give up on that little girl." "I'm not giving up. I'm so tired, Clara. Tired of fighting uphill every single day." She gripped his hands, her weathered fingers strong around his. "You won't fight alone. Not this time." "Why do you care so much?" Clara's eyes filled. "Because I was wrong about you. Because my husband would have stood with you. Because that little girl loves you more than life itself, and you love her the same." Her voice hardened. "And because Earl Simmons and his poison won't win. Not in my town." Marcus looked at their joined hands. Clara's wedding ring still gleamed after all these years. "I don't know if I have the strength." "Then borrow mine. Borrow the whole town's if you need to." She squeezed tighter. "We're going to that hearing, and we're going to show them exactly who Marcus Walker is." Outside, November wind rattled the windows, but inside, for the first time in days, Marcus felt something besides fear. Maybe not quite hope, but something close enough to keep breathing. Gray morning light crept through the thin curtains. Marcus opened his eyes to find them already burning, gritty from another sleepless night. 3 hours, maybe 4. The red numbers on the clock read 6:47. "Daddy?" Grace stood in the doorway, already dressed in her favorite purple sweater. "Can I bring my butterfly book to show and tell?" He pushed himself upright, muscles protesting. "Course you can, baby." "Mrs. Henderson says butterflies migrate thousands of miles." "Thousands? Can you imagine flying that far?" "That's real far." She bounced on her toes. "Maybe we could go see them sometime, when they stop in Mexico." The knife twisted deeper. What if there was no sometime? What if Monday changed everything? "Yeah, maybe we could." Grace studied his face. "You look tired again." "Just thinking about work." The lie came easier now. Too easy. "Well, stop thinking so hard." She kissed his cheek. "Love you." "Love you too. So much." She grabbed her backpack and headed for the door. Marcus watched her ponytail swing, memorizing the way morning light caught in her hair. The door clicked shut. His head dropped into his hands. The table felt cold against his elbows. Everything felt cold. A knock interrupted the silence. Clara stood on his porch holding a covered dish. Scrambled eggs and bacon, still warm. "Clara, you don't have to—" "Hush." She pushed past him into the kitchen. "When did you last eat a real meal?" He couldn't remember. She set the plate down, pointed at the chair. "Sit." "I'm not hungry." "I didn't ask if you were hungry. I said sit." He sat. The eggs were fluffy, seasoned with pepper and something else. Cheese, maybe. His stomach cramped at the first bite, then demanded more. Clara poured coffee from his half-empty pot, grimaced at the taste. "This is terrible. Ran out of the good stuff." "I'll bring some tomorrow." She sat across from him. "Now, about Monday." "Clara?" "I'm coming with you." "No." That wasn't a question. Marcus set down his fork. "This isn't your fight." "Like hell it isn't." Her voice could have cut glass. You think I'm letting you walk into that courtroom alone? I don't want to drag you into this mess. Too late? I'm already in it. She leaned forward. Marcus, pride is a luxury you can't afford right now. It's not pride, it's... He struggled for words. You've done enough. The meals, the groceries. Stop. I can't keep taking from you. You're not taking. I'm giving. There's a difference. I can't pay you back. Did I ask you to? Clara's eyes blazed. You think this is about money? You think I care about being paid back? Then what is it about? It's about doing what's right. It's about not letting good people get crushed by lies. Her voice cracked. It's about not failing someone again. Marcus looked at her, really looked, saw the determination carved into every line of her face. You didn't fail anyone. I failed you, that night in the diner. That's done? Forgiven? Not by me. She gripped her coffee mug. I'm coming Monday. Final answer. He knew that tone. No point arguing. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We've got work to do. That evening, Clara's kitchen phone grew hot from use. Mrs. Patterson, it's Clara Thompson. Yes, I'm calling about Marcus Walker. 20 minutes later. Tom, you remember when Marcus fixed your truck? For free? Then, Sarah, didn't Marcus help your boy with his science project? Each call built the same case. Marcus Walker was a good man, a good father. Anyone who said different was lying. Some people promised immediately to help. Others hesitated. I don't want to get involved, Mrs. Davis said. He mowed your lawn all summer when you broke your hip. I know, but... But nothing. The man needs us now. By 10 o'clock, Clara had 15 confirmed supporters. Not enough. Not nearly enough. She walked to Marcus's house, found him on the porch steps. He sat hunched forward, hands clasped, lips moving silently. She stopped at the sidewalk, not wanting to interrupt. The streetlight caught the exhaustion etched into his features, the way his shoulders carried the weight of the world. His prayer was barely a whisper, but she caught fragments. Keep her safe. Give me strength. Don't know what else to do. Her chest ached. This man who'd been dismissed as trash, who'd been gossiped about and judged, sat here praying for strength to face another impossible day. She thought of her husband, dead 10 years now. He would have liked Marcus, would have seen past the surface to the steel underneath. I won't let them take her, she promised silently. Whatever it takes, I won't let them destroy this family. Marcus's prayer continued, a lonely sound in the darkness. Clara turned away, leaving him to his conversation with God. Monday loomed like a storm cloud, but storms could be weathered. They had to be. The courthouse steps stretched like a mountain face. Marcus adjusted his collar for the 5th time. The shirt was 8 years old, bought for his wife's funeral, but he'd pressed it until the creases could cut paper. Daddy, you look nice. Grace squeezed his hand. Her Sunday dress, the yellow one with daisies, made her look smaller than usual, more fragile. So do you, baby girl. Clara waited at the bottom of the steps. Behind her stood Mrs. Patterson, Tom Bradley, and Sarah Chen, a handful of others Marcus recognized from around town. Not many, but more than he'd expected. Ready? Clara wore her church dress, the navy one with pearl buttons. No. Good. Means you understand what we're facing. The courthouse halls echoed with their footsteps. Grace's hand stayed locked in his, her palm damp with nerves. Marcus wanted to tell her everything would be fine, but the words stuck in his throat. The hearing room was smaller than he'd imagined. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a judge's bench that seemed too high. They sat in the front row, Clara on his left, Grace on his right. The CPS caseworker, Ms. Reynolds, organized her papers with practiced efficiency. She was younger than Marcus, maybe 30, with the kind of concerned expression that probably worked well in her job. Your Honor, she began, we're here regarding the welfare of Grace Walker, age 8. The judge, an older black woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, nodded. Proceed. Mr. Walker works 3 jobs, totaling approximately 70 hours per week. This leaves Grace unsupervised for extended periods. Marcus's jaw tightened. Clara's hand briefly touched his arm. Furthermore, Mr. Walker's combined income barely covers basic necessities. There are concerns about adequate nutrition, supervision, and stability. Each word felt like a stone added to his chest. Grace pressed closer to his side. "Mr. Walker," the judge said, "would you like to respond?" He stood, legs unsteady. "Your Honor, His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "I work 3 jobs because that's what it takes. The auto shop, the loading dock, weekend landscaping. Every dollar goes to Grace. And supervision? She's never alone more than an hour. Mrs. Chen next door checks on her. There's always food." "Bread and peanut butter isn't adequate nutrition," Ms. Reynolds interrupted. "It's what I can afford. But she never goes hungry. Never." "Mr. Walker, no one's questioning your love for your daughter, but love doesn't pay bills or provide proper care." The words hung in the air like a verdict already decided. "Your Honor," Clara stood, without invitation. "May I speak?" The judge frowned. "And you are?" "Clara Thompson. I run Thompson's Diner." "This is a closed hearing, Ms. Thompson." "I'm here as a character witness." Ms. Reynolds shuffled her papers. "That wasn't arranged." "I'm arranging it now." Clara's voice could have frozen fire. "Unless you'd prefer I wait outside and tell everyone how this court refuses to hear the truth about Marcus Walker." The judge removed her glasses, cleaned them slowly. "Miss Thompson, you may speak. Briefly." Clara moved forward like she owned the room. "6 weeks ago, I said something shameful. Marcus came into my diner, exhausted from his 3rd job, and I called him trash." Gasps rippled through the small crowd. Marcus stared at the floor. "I said it because I was small-minded and judgmental, because I saw his worn clothes and tired face and made assumptions." Clara's voice gained strength. "You want to know what he did? He thanked me for the coffee and left. With dignity I couldn't have managed." She turned to face Ms. Reynolds directly. "You say he can't provide? Let me tell you what I've learned. Marcus Walker fixed Mrs. Patterson's car and refused payment. He tutored Tom Bradley's son in math after working 14-hour days. He shoveled driveways all winter for elderly neighbors, never asking for a dime." "Miss Thompson." "I'm not finished." Clara's eyes blazed. "You sit there with your forms and statistics, but you don't see the man. You don't see him reading to Grace every night, despite exhaustion. You don't see him skipping meals so she can eat. You don't see the prayer journal where he writes letters to his dead wife, promising to raise their daughter right." Marcus's head snapped up. How did she know about the journal? "This man you call inadequate, he's worth 10 of most people I know, including me." The room fell silent. The judge tapped her pen against the bench. "Mr. Walker, is there anyone else who'd like to speak on your behalf?" Tom Bradley stood. "I would, Your Honor." Then Mrs. Patterson, Sarah Chen. One by one they rose. The judge checked her watch. "Ms. Reynolds, how many witnesses did you bring?" "Well, The report speaks for itself." "Reports don't raise children, Ms. Reynolds." The judge looked at the small crowd standing for Marcus. "We'll reconvene tomorrow at 9. I want to hear from these witnesses." She focused on Marcus. "Mr. Walker, bring any documentation you have regarding Grace's care. Medical records, school reports, anything relevant." "Yes, Your Honor." "And Ms. Reynolds, next time you investigate a family, perhaps speak to their community first." As they filed out, Grace tugged Marcus's sleeve. "Daddy, why did all those people stand up?" "Because," he looked at Clara, at the others gathering around them, "because sometimes people surprise you, baby girl." Clara caught his eye. "Tomorrow we bring everything. Every receipt, every thank you card, every proof that you're the father Grace needs." The fight wasn't over, but for the first time in weeks, Marcus felt something besides fear. He felt hope. The courthouse steps buzzed with more people than Marcus expected. Clara had worked through the night, he realized, watching her guide another witness toward the entrance. "Marcus fixed my roof last spring," old Walter Hayes told anyone who'd listen. "Wouldn't take a penny. said helping neighbors was just what folks did. Inside the hearing room, Judge Martinez settled into her chair. Ms. Reynolds looked less confident than yesterday, her folder of reports somehow thinner against the crowd filling the benches. "We'll hear from the community witnesses," the judge announced. Mrs. Patterson went first, her cane tapping against the floor as she approached. "That young man changed my tire in the pouring rain. I offered him $40. You know what he said? 'Put it in the collection plate Sunday, Mrs. Patterson. God knows who needs it more than me.'" She dabbed her eyes. "My own son lives 2 towns over, visits maybe twice a year. But Marcus, he checks my porch light every week to make sure it's working." Tom Bradley stood next, his construction boots loud on the polished floor. "My boy Jake was failing algebra, would have been held back." He shifted his weight. "Marcus already worked 3 jobs, but he sat with Jake every Tuesday evening for 2 months, free of charge. Jake passed with a B-." "Did Mr. Walker have any teaching qualifications?" Ms. Reynolds interjected. "He had patience and kindness. That qualified enough for my son." The judge made notes. Next witness. Sarah Chen approached, her infant balanced on her hip. "Last month, my husband got called for an emergency shift at the hospital. Our regular sitter canceled. I had nobody." Her voice wavered. "I knocked on Marcus's door at 9 at night. He had Grace sleeping on the couch, homework spread on his table, grease still under his nails from work. But he took my kids without hesitation, fed them dinner from his own pantry." "What did he charge?" the judge asked. "Nothing. He said single parents had to stick together." Ms. Reynolds stood. "Your Honor, while these stories are touching, they don't address the central issue of Mr. Walker's financial instability." "Sit down, Ms. Reynolds. You'll have your turn." The testimonies continued. The hardware store owner described Marcus repairing his delivery truck in exchange for school supplies for Grace. The librarian mentioned how he volunteered for story time despite exhaustion. Even the grumpy pharmacist admitted Marcus shoveled his walkway after his hip surgery. Earl Simmons couldn't contain himself any longer. He stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You're all acting like he's some kind of saint. He's manipulating your sympathy." "Mr. Simmons, you weren't called as a witness," the judge said sharply. "Someone needs to tell the truth. He takes advantage of people's pity. That girl of his—" "Don't." Marcus's voice cut through the room like a blade. He'd been silent through every testimony, but Earl mentioning Grace lit something in his eyes. "Say whatever you want about me, but leave my daughter out of your mouth." Earl's face reddened. "See threatening behavior." "Oh, shut up, Earl." "Earl," Clara rose like a force of nature, "you're just bitter because Marcus has something you'll never have, respect. I run a successful business. You run a bitter little kingdom where you charge twice what food's worth and treat your workers like dirt. When's the last time someone stood up for you, Earl? When's the last time anyone said you helped them?" The silence that followed felt heavy as lead. Earl sank into his seat, face mottled with rage and embarrassment. Young Jake Bradley asked to speak next. The teenager's voice cracked as he explained how Marcus never made him feel stupid for not understanding equations. He'd say, "Your brain just learns different, Jake. We'll find your way. Nobody ever told me that before." The judge turned to Marcus. "Mr. Walker, would you like to respond to these testimonies?" Marcus stood slowly, hands shaking slightly. "I don't know what to say. I never knew. I just did what seemed right, what my wife would have wanted me to do." "Your late wife?" "Yes, ma'am. Before she died, she made me promise to raise Grace with kindness, to show her that the world had good people in it, even when times got hard." He looked at the crowd. "I never knew I had this many neighbors who cared. I thought I was alone." "Daddy?" Grace's small voice carried from her seat. "You're never alone. You have me." A few people wiped their eyes. Even the judge paused before speaking. "Ms. Reynolds, do you have any witnesses to call?" The caseworker shuffled papers. The initial report suggested, "Do you have witnesses? People who've actually interacted with Mr. Walker and Grace?" No, Your Honor. Then I've heard enough for today. We'll reconvene tomorrow for my decision. As people filed out, Grace broke free and ran to Marcus, wrapping her arms around his waist. See, Daddy? People know you're good. Marcus lifted her up, holding her close. Over her shoulder he saw Clara organizing tomorrow's witnesses, Earl slinking away defeated, and neighbors, real neighbors, nodding their support. Yeah, baby girl, maybe they do. The morning arrived cold and bright. Marcus stood before his cracked bathroom mirror, straightening the same worn tie for the 5th time. Grace sat on his bed, swinging her legs. Daddy, your hands are shaking. He stilled them against his thighs. Just nervous, baby. Miss Clara says being nervous means you care about something real hard. Miss Clara's right. The courthouse felt colder than yesterday. The same faces filled the benches, but the atmosphere hung heavier. Judge Patricia Morgan entered with measured steps, her expression unreadable. Mr. Walker, please approach. Marcus stood, legs unsteady. Clara reached out and squeezed his hand briefly. Before I render my decision, I have one final question. The judge peered over her glasses. Your work situation remains unstable. Your hours were recently cut. How do you plan to continue providing for Grace? The courtroom held its breath. Marcus's throat worked. He glanced back at Grace, her eyes wide and trusting. Your Honor, His voice cracked. He cleared it and started again. I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. Ms. Reynolds shifted forward in her seat. But I can tell you this. Marcus's voice grew stronger. I will work any job, dig ditches, clean toilets, walk 20 miles if my car breaks down again. I'll wear the same shirt until it falls apart, skip meals so she doesn't have to. His hands clenched at his sides. I've done it before. When my wife got sick, I worked 4 jobs, slept in hospital waiting rooms, learned to braid hair from YouTube videos because Denise couldn't do it anymore, figured out which generic cereals tasted closest to the real thing, so Grace wouldn't notice we couldn't afford name brands. Grace made a small sound. He kept going. I don't have a college degree, don't have savings, don't have family money or a fancy house, but I have something Ms. Reynolds' reports can't measure. I have a love for that little girl that makes me get up every morning no matter how tired I am, makes me smile when she shows me her drawings, even when my back's screaming from bending over engines all day. His voice roughened with emotion. You ask how I'll provide? Same way I always have, one day at a time, one sacrifice at a time, because that's what fathers do, real fathers. They don't give up, not ever. He turned to look directly at Grace. She's my whole world, Your Honor. Without her, I'm just marking time. With her, I have purpose, and I'll die before I let her down. The silence stretched like taffy. Clara pressed her fist against her mouth. Even Earl, lurking in the back row, looked away. Judge Morgan removed her glasses, cleaned them slowly. Ms. Reynolds, do you have anything to add? The caseworker stood. Your Honor, while Mr. Walker's devotion is admirable, love alone doesn't... Doesn't what? The judge's voice sharpened. Doesn't keep a roof overhead? Doesn't put food on tables? I've reviewed your report, Ms. Reynolds. Grace Walker has never missed school, never arrived dirty or unfed. Her teacher describes her as bright, kind, and well-adjusted. The pediatrician confirms she's healthy, up-to-date on checkups despite Mr. Walker having no insurance. She shuffled papers. Furthermore, your initial report came from an anonymous source who couldn't provide any actual evidence of neglect. Just allegations about financial instability. Half this town faces financial instability, Ms. Reynolds. Should we remove all their children too? No, Your Honor, but I've made my decision. The room froze. In the matter of Grace Walker's custody, I find no evidence of neglect, abuse, or inability to provide adequate care. Mr. Walker has demonstrated exceptional dedication under extremely difficult circumstances. Marcus's knees nearly buckled. However, the judge continued, causing hearts to stutter, it's clear this family needs support. Therefore, I'm ordering CPS to close this case immediately, with the strong recommendation that this community, which has shown up so powerfully today, continues to rally around the Walkers. She looked directly at Clara. Real communities don't let good people struggle alone. Mr. Walker, you retain full custody of your daughter. Case dismissed. The gavel came down like thunder. For a moment nobody moved. Then Grace's voice pierced the silence. "Daddy?" She flew across the room. Marcus caught her, lifting her high as his legs finally gave out, dropping them both into a crouch. He held her against his chest, shoulders shaking. Clara moved next, tears streaming unchecked down her weathered face. She wrapped her arms around both of them, her carpenter-rough hands gentle as a mother's. "You're safe now, both of you." The courtroom erupted. Not in cheers, this crowd knew better, but in soft applause, murmured prayers of thanks, quiet tears of relief. Marcus stood slowly, Grace still clinging to him. He found himself surrounded. The widow whose car he'd fixed, Jake, and his grateful mother, Sarah Chen, bouncing her baby, the librarian, the pharmacist, people whose names he barely knew, but whose burdens he'd quietly helped carry. "We got you," someone said. "Won't let you struggle alone anymore," said another. Ms. Reynolds packed her briefcase with sharp movements, mouth pinched. Earl had already slipped out. His vindictive plan collapsed. Judge Morgan watched from her bench as the community closed ranks around Marcus and Grace. Marcus finally found his voice. "Thank you, all of you. I can't." "Then don't," Clara said firmly. "Family doesn't need speeches." Grace pulled back to look at Marcus's face. "Daddy, you're crying." "Happy tears, baby." "Me too." She pressed her small hands against his cheeks. "We're going to be okay now, right?" Marcus breathed freely for the first time in weeks. The air tasted clean, full of possibility. "Yeah, baby girl, we're going to be just fine." 3 days after the hearing, Clara stood on a ladder outside the diner, her hands steady despite her 63 years. Marcus held the ladder's base while Grace danced around them, barely containing her excitement. "Can I pull the sheet off, please, Miss Clara?" Clara climbed down, dusting her hands on her apron. "Been waiting for you to ask, sweetheart." The small crowd that had gathered, mostly folks from the hearing, watched as Clara lifted Grace onto Marcus's shoulders. The little girl reached for the white sheet covering the new sign. "On 3, Clara said. 1, 2. Grace yanked hard. The sheet fluttered down like a surrender flag, revealing freshly painted letters in deep blue against cream wood. Grace's table. Below, in smaller script, "Where everyone has a seat." Grace gasped. "That's my name." "Sure is," Clara's voice carried across the gathering. "Named it after you, little one, but it means more than that." She turned to address the crowd, morning sun catching the silver in her hair. "Grace isn't just this beautiful child here. It's what we all need, what we give when we don't think folks deserve it, what we receive when we've messed up bad." Her eyes found Marcus. "It's what your daddy showed me when I said words I'll regret till I die. Could have hated me, had every right. Instead, he showed Grace." Marcus shifted, uncomfortable with the attention, but Clara pressed on. "This diner used to be about keeping up appearances, about who belonged and who didn't. My Harold would have been ashamed of what it became." Her voice cracked slightly. "But starting today, Grace's table is about something different. It's about knowing everybody needs help sometimes, everybody deserves dignity, and nobody—" She looked directly at Earl Simmons, who lurked at the crowd's edge. "Nobody gets to decide who's worthy based on what's in their wallet." Applause rippled through the gathering. Grace bounced on Marcus's shoulders, clapping hardest of all. "Can we eat now?" she stage whispered, making everyone laugh. That evening, Clara flipped the diner's sign to closed 2 hours early. Inside, she'd set up the corner booth special. Tablecloth she'd saved from her wedding, the good plates usually reserved for holidays, even a small vase with wildflowers Grace had picked from the empty lot next door. "This is too much," Marcus protested as Clara brought out dish after dish. Fried chicken golden as sunset, mac and cheese that made Grace's eyes go wide, green beans cooked with ham hock, cornbread still steaming from the oven. Hush, been wanting to cook a proper meal for family for years now. The word hung in the air. Family. Grace didn't hesitate. She scooted over in the booth, patting the space beside her. Sit with us, Miss Clara. Family eats together. Clara's hand trembled as she untied her apron. She'd eaten alone for 10 years, standing at the counter or in the kitchen. But Grace's small hand pulled her down, and suddenly the booth felt full in a way her whole house hadn't felt since Harold passed. Marcus said grace, his deep voice gentle. Lord, thank you for this food, for friends who become family, for second chances we don't deserve but receive anyway. Amen. Amen, Grace chirped, already reaching for the chicken. They ate slowly, savoring. Grace chattered about school, her teacher, the library book about dolphins she'd checked out. Marcus shared a funny story about a customer who'd insisted his car made a whooshing sound only on Tuesdays. Clara found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in years. Miss Clara, Grace said suddenly, mouth full of cornbread, Daddy says you had a husband who went to heaven like Mommy. Marcus started to scold her for talking with her mouth full, but Clara waved him off. I did. His name was Harold. Was he nice? The nicest. He would have loved you, sweetheart. Had a soft spot for little girls with big hearts. Grace considered this. Maybe he and Mommy are friends in heaven. Mommy likes making friends. The simple innocence of it pierced Clara's heart. She reached across the table, squeezing Marcus's hand briefly. I bet they are. Later, as Grace worked through a massive slice of pecan pie, Marcus spoke quietly. Clara, what you did at that hearing, standing up for us like that. Least I could do after about... No. His voice firm but kind. You didn't owe us anything. You chose to stand with us. When I was at my lowest, ready to give up, you reminded me I wasn't alone. Can't ever repay that. Don't want repayment. Want family. Marcus's eyes glistened. Then you got it. Grace, chocolate pecan smeared on her chin, announced, This is my favorite restaurant in the whole world. Mine too, baby, Marcus said softly. Mine too. Outside, townspeople passed by, peering through windows at the unlikely family sharing a meal. The widow from Oak Street smiled, remembering her own family dinners years past. The teenage boy Marcus had tutored pointed them out to his girlfriend, proud. Even the pharmacist, walking his dog, stopped to watch the warm scene. Word spread, as word does in small towns, but this time the whispers carried a different tune. Stories of grace given and received, of community choosing unity over division, of an old diner reborn not just in name, but in spirit. The last of the sunset painted Grace's table gold, and inside, a family that had found each other against all odds shared their first of many meals together. A month passed like morning mist burning off under summer sun. Marcus's toolbox rattled less desperately now as he walked to work. Mr. Henderson at the auto shop had bumped him to full-time, even hinting at training him for electrical work. You got steady hands and a good head, Henderson had said, wiping grease on his coveralls. Could use someone reliable on the diagnostic computers. The extra hours meant Marcus could finally start that savings jar, the one he'd emptied 3 times before for rent and groceries. Clara had given him an old pickle jar from the diner, label scrubbed clean. For your car fund, she'd said simply, but Marcus caught her slipping a 20 inside when she thought he wasn't looking. Grace's table hummed with new life. Families who'd never set foot in Clara's diner before now filled the booth Sunday afternoons. The Martinez family from the trailer park. The young couple with twin babies who worked night shifts at the hospital. Even old Mrs. Chen, who'd always eaten at Earl's place, switched allegiance after hearing how Clara had stood up at the custody hearing. Earl's restaurant grew quieter by the week. Spite makes for bitter seasoning, and folks could taste it in every meal. This particular Sunday shimmered with late spring warmth. Church had run long. Reverend Williams got going about loving thy neighbor and couldn't seem to stop. Grace had fidgeted through the sermon, but she'd sung every hymn loud enough for 3 people. Now the 3 of them sat in their booth. It had become theirs without anyone saying so, sharing a blackberry pie Clara had baked that morning. The berries stained Grace's lips purple. "Daddy, can I have another piece?" "You'll bust?" "No, I won't. I got room." She patted her stomach for emphasis. Clara cut a sliver, winking at Marcus. "Growing girls need their fruit." "That's enabling," Marcus said, but his smile took the sting out. The diner was quiet, closed on Sundays except for them. Sunlight slanted through windows Clara had finally hired Marcus to fix. No more drafts whistling through cracked panes. The coffee maker gurgled its familiar tune. Clara watched Marcus help Grace with her pie, catching drips before they hit her church dress. The same hands that could rebuild an engine moved gentle as butterfly wings around his daughter. A year ago, 2 months ago, Clara would have seen only the color of those hands. Now she saw their grace. "Penny for your thoughts," Marcus said. Clara startled. "Just remembering. Good memories or bad?" She considered. "Both. Remembering the worst thing I ever said. Also remembering how you responded to it." Marcus set down his fork. Grace, sensing grown-up talk, focused intently on her pie. "Clara, no, let me say this." She twisted her wedding ring, still worn after all these years. "I called you trash, to your face, in my own restaurant." Grace looked up, eyes wide. "Miss Clara, you didn't." "I did, sweetheart. I was scared and mean and wrong." "But why?" Clara met the child's honest gaze. "Because sometimes fear makes people stupid. I was afraid of things changing, afraid of people who didn't look like me or live like me. Your daddy had every right to walk away and never come back." "But he didn't," Grace said simply. "Daddy doesn't leave people." Marcus's hand covered Clara's weathered one. "Everybody deserves a second chance." "Not everybody takes it," Clara said. "Not everybody even sees it. You could have reported me, raised hell, made my life miserable. Instead, you showed me grace I didn't deserve." "That's what grace is," Marcus said quietly. "Undeserved." Clara squeezed his hand. "You proved something to me, Marcus Walker. Proved people can change, even old stubborn fools like me. Harold tried to tell me for years, 'Clara, heart's got to stay soft or it'll break.' But I let mine go hard after he died. You and Grace here, you softened it back up." "You softened ours too," Marcus said. "Been a long time since Grace had a grandmother figure." "Can I call you Grandma Clara?" Grace piped up, blackberry filling on her chin. Clara's eyes filled. "I'd be honored, baby girl." Grace scooted out of her side of the booth and into Clara's, snuggling against her side. "Good, 'cause I've been wanting to." They sat like that as afternoon light grew golden. Grace's eyelids drooped, church and pie and warmth working their magic. She shifted, resting her head on Marcus's shoulder while her feet stretched across Clara's lap. "See, Daddy," Grace murmured, already half asleep. "Miss Clara is family now." Marcus nodded, his eyes full of gratitude that words couldn't carry. "Yeah, baby. She sure is." Clara clasped both their hands, Marcus's calloused from work, Grace's sticky with blackberry. Outside, the sign for Grace's table creaked gently in the breeze. Inside, 3 people who'd found each other in the worst moment had built something better than any of them had imagined. Not bound by blood, but by something stronger, compassion, fought for and won, dignity defended and maintained, grace given and received. The old diner walls, witness to decades of meals and conversations, had never held anything more precious than this. A family stitched together by choice, by forgiveness, by the simple recognition that everyone deserves a place at the table. The afternoon sun blessed them through the windows, and Clara thought Harold would be smiling if he could see this. His Clara finally understanding what he'd always known, that love multiplies when you give it away, that hearts grow bigger when they break open, that the best families are the ones you choose. Grace's breathing deepened into sleep. Marcus and Clara sat in comfortable silence, guardians of this small, perfect moment. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but today they were whole. If you enjoyed the story, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.